All right. So anyway, this is the article that I ended up writing for LinkedIn, and so far, well, 147 people have read it so far. Well, that's pretty good. 12 people, I guess, kind of agreed with it. Talk about getting laid off and you can't find a job. That's what we're talking about. Today we're going to be talking about stress. Is this not stressful? You can't find a job. And like I said, a lot of times people, they're so upset about things that they don't really spend time to analyze why it happened or what they can do about it. Okay? So I get a lot of times, or a lot of people will call me up and they'll ask me that. Right now there are thousands of open safety jobs. You want to know something? Over the last 10 years, there have been thousands of safety is one of those professions that a lot of people don't know that you can get a degree in it. And so when you're out there looking for a job, you don't think about occupational safety. So we have a lot of people who are out looking for a job. Maybe they were a safety trainer, a few months ago or something along that lines. We find out that we have about three avenues that we're going to run into. First avenue of why you don't have a job or you can't find a job is location. It is human nature for people that they're comfortable where they're at. Okay, I've planted seeds, I've grown roots in this area, and I don't want to leave. So when all of a sudden they're out looking for a job, now they have a problem. They're looking for a job in Roswell, New Mexico, or Artesia, or Carlsbad. They don't want to have to drive 2 hours, 3 hours. I used to drive 4 hours to work one way every day when I first got into the safety field.
That's an 8-hour day before you leave the door.
That's an 8-hour day. I used to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning just to make it to my area. And the reason why I had to drive 4 hours a day is because the area that I was working in was Palm Beach and Miami. And at that time, I couldn't afford to live in Palm Beach and Miami where I wanted to live. So I made a choice. 4 hours a day or pay, $1,200 a month extra on something that, someplace that you want to live. So location. How far do you guys, how far do you have to drive for work yourself, Israel?
Well, I had to drive about 7 miles.
7 miles. Now, you've lived in Roswell for how long?
Since 2003.
2003. Juan?
I drive about 6 miles.
About 6 miles, and you've lived here for how long?
Lifetime resident.
Lifetime. And yourself?
Lived here all my life.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I would say differently about summer, but as of right now, like 4 miles.
The campus here is at the south end of Roswell. How big of a pain is it to drive to the north end, say Walmart, for lunch?
That would be hard.
That's hard.
It's not too bad.
You know how many miles that is?
You only got an hour.
It's like 8 miles, 10 miles.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were in a big city, that it takes approximately 12 minutes to get to the other side of town. 12 minutes in a big city, that is waiting in the elevator, going all the way down to the bottom floor, walking out to the street. That's assuming that you have a car in a big city, because in a big city you may not have a car. Hailing a cab, going to lunch, standing in line with the other 65 people who are trying to get lunch at the same time, grabbing your lunch, and then doing the same thing coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, we're going to talk today about a matter of perspective. Honestly, to drive from one end of this town to the other end of this town was really a kind of a short distance.
Yeah.
But you want to have lunch at your location here. You want something close by. Why do street vendors in New York, selling hot dogs? Why do they make so much money? because it is convenient. I come down out of my building, I can get my lunch right there.
Yeah.
I read a rant. There was a young lady who is a millennial, and she was ranting by the fact that her company, which I believe was Yelp, that they did not supply her with enough snacks so that she could eat at work. You know, and you guys know that Google has a history of they provide free lunch and stuff like that to keep the people there and working. So location, that's one of the reasons why people, they don't want to drive, they want to have their career right where they're currently at. So location is going to be one of them.
All out.
Next is going to be experience. And this is where in the safety career field, we start to see a real disparity between people who do safety and people who are educated in safety. Okay, big difference between the two. Because a lot of times people got that job. They were somebody's cousin, or they knew a guy, or whatever. They got the job and they backed in. I would make up, I'm making up a number, but I would say 85% of most safety people, or most people who are doing safety, one form or another, probably backed into the job. I backed into the job. When I started my safety career 37 years ago, I was a master mechanic. And they said, hey, do you think you could do a little bit of safety for us? And so I started doing that. I enjoyed it. Found out that I was pretty good at it at the time. Did a little bit more, did a little bit more. Finally got into writing some regulations for the Pacific Air Command, some safety regs there. Got back to the States because I was in the military. Got back to the States, and my commander basically told me, we're going to put you on a blacklist. I says, well, what do you mean? He says, well, we like the job that you're doing so well that when orders come down, you're not going to get them. And I ended up staying at a stateside base for 13 years, which is kind of unheard of in the military. So, experience. You may have a ton of experience, but no safety education. And that is, man, that's a tough pill to swallow right now, because you may have 20 years working in the oil field doing nothing but safety. I think that experience in the safety field is worth its weight in gold. But then when we start talking about DART rates, or when we start talking about certain elements of a safety program where you must have some sort of education, you didn't go to the classes. And now you're back out into the job market, and the people that you are up against, they have education. They may not have the experience. Like I said, experience is worth a lot. But they have education on doing this. They have a piece of paper that says, I am a bona fide safety person. I got the education. Now we look at what some of the OSHA requirements. OSHA requirements is that you got to have experience. And actually OSHA really wants you to have documented experience. But what do they really look for? They look for education, a degree, certification, certificates, formal instruction in what you're going to be talking about. So experience is going to really play into it. Other than that, we get into probably the last part of it, and that's going to be all the way down here at the bottom, money. Money, money, money. I want to make $100,000 a year. I want to make 150, or I want to make 26,000. Let's go back to the person from Yelp, because I'm going to write an article on this one here, because I really think that millennials are getting kind of a bum rap, but then again, somebody has got to also just kind of lay it out straight for them. So here we have this young lady in this particular case. She is working for Yelp, and they are only paying her minimum wage in her area, and I think that she was living in, I'm going to say she's living in San Francisco. It may have been a different city, but it was a big city. And she's making $8 and I think 65 cents an hour. Now, if you were to go back 10 years ago, $8.65 an hour, even in Roswell, it's not great money, but it's survivable money, right? So $8.65. And her complaint was that they expected her to work long hours, and they didn't give her enough money to where she did not make a minimum living wage. So what exactly does that mean, a minimum living wage? In y'all's opinion, what is a minimum living wage?
Well, I guess it'd be minimum wage.
Not minimum wage, minimum living wage.
Enough
He-
to live comfortable. Or at least-
Comfortable.
Or
The-
at least be
the
able to do
minimum
the things you wanna
Requirement,
do.
like OSHA, the minimum requirement to stay alive.
At least enough to be able to eat where you wanna eat, or maybe go out on Sunday or Saturday night to.
You know what? We'll work with that because that is really kind of a millennial expectation
What's
that
the
I'm
minimum?
going to make enough money to where I can live where I want to live and I can eat what I want to eat. Would you agree with that? So that is what you would consider. Now you're a little bit older than a millennial.
What's a millennial?
Um,
Somebody born in the millennium?
Yes, after 2000. So you were born when, Israel?
81.
81. So like I said, you're older than a millennial. You were born when?
97.
97. So
Close enough to be a millennial?
yeah, you're millennial-ish. How's that?
I'm between Generation X and that millennium stage. I'm right.
Okay.
Like I grew up without electronics, but I kind of grew up with them. You know?
Well, you know, one thing that I noticed this last week, I noticed is that whenever it comes to millennials, uh, they do a lot of stuff on YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that.
Twitter and
Yeah.
text all the time. That's what we had before Google came out.
I saw someone selling encyclopedias the other day, so yes,
Oh, wow.
a lot of people don't realize what an encyclopedia is and looking stuff up. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. So minimum living wage. Now you currently have a job, but let's make the assumption that you do not have a job. And you're going to go out and find yourself a job that will pay you a minimum living wage, where you can eat where you want and live where you want. Would you consider that you live in a fancy house right now?
No,
Okay. Do you drive an expensive car?
average.
Average. Okay. And would you, now because we're in Roswell, New Mexico, the restaurants around here are really kind of, there are no fancy restaurants.
Radio.
They're average, basically. So could you survive on $8.65 an hour living in Roswell, New Mexico?
What that is?
Like living wage? No, I don't think so.
That's not what I asked.
No.
Could you afford your lifestyle right now on $8.65 an hour?
No.
No. Okay. So, but that's all the job that you have right now. What are you going to do?
Suck it up and keep chugging
You cut.
and try to get some kind of a.
You put
Education
needs
in the
before
meantime.
wants. That's what you do.
You put needs before wants. Okay.
Because I want to go out to eat, but do I need to go out to eat? No, I can just make something at home.
You reprioritize.
You
Okay.
get a second job. 'Cause
That's the
I'm
problem
about
about the
to eat.
GoFood workers, and I know they want all this stuff, but they're not gonna get it. They just right now what they need is to maintain all their bills and do all this, but what they're wanting, what they're trying to get right now is they're wanting to find a job that can still pay for all the toys and buy all these luxury things. That's the problem with GoFood workers right now. They're wanting more than they're needing.
Right, because you know, and in the oil field, we have seen this. This is a, I don't want to put this label on everyone because it is not on everyone, but there are quite a few people who maybe did not even get a high school education. But let's say they have less than a college education, and they were making $65,000 a year driving a water truck. And now all of a sudden they're back on the street because we don't need water truck drivers in this particular case. So they're back on the street with no education, but when you make $65,000 a year, you spend $65,000 a year, and now you're back down to 10 or 15 because you're collecting unemployment. But that's a separate problem.
Yeah.
You guys are going to graduate. Now, Juan, you're how old?
40.
40. And Israel, you are
34.
34. And you, Alex,
18.
18. Alex is 18. So, you three guys go out and you're going to apply for a job at XYZ Safety Company. What is your expectations of the offering bid? I'm going to start with you, Alex, because you're 18 years old. What is your expectations of the offering bid to give you a job in Roswell, New Mexico?
Well, it depends on that. 50,000.
50,000? You'd
Yeah.
be comfortable with a $50,000 offer.
50 or 60.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex, you're 18. Is that a fair expectation?
Not necessarily, but for what I guess we could say what I invested myself into, I know my worth.
Okay,
So
so your perception is, and we're going to talk about perception all during today, your perception is that you are worth $50,000 a year once you graduate from the course.
well, if I was going into safety, yeah. If I was just regular,
That's all that we're talking about. We're going to kind of keep focused here. Israel, what is your expectation?
I guess fresh out of college, I mean, perhaps the only thing I'll have is a paper, but maybe no experience. So I guess if I can start off somewhere between 45 and 60, that'd be okay.
45 and 60.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a range, a little bit less than what Alex wanted, but a little bit more depending on your age or something or some experience. What about yourself there, Juan?
I think I'd go a little higher. I'd go 55 to 65.
55. Now, why do you think that you warrant $55,000 a year?
Professional experience.
You know, Ruth.
Professional experience. Not
Okay.
necessarily in that field, just
Life experience.
life experience.
Life experience.
Knowing how to deal with people, how to talk to people, how to management experience.
Okay. Ruth, what would you expect? You've heard the conversation.
I would go between 80 and 90.
80 and 90.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about expectations.
Yeah.
And the reason why you would expect between 80 and 90.
Because I know they're gonna make me work for my money. So being bilingual, you're gonna have a lot more work. You're gonna be called more times. They're gonna want more of you. And if you go in there and wanting 50, they're gonna give you 50, and they're gonna be happy.
Oh, they are going to be happy
to
with it.
give you 50, but you're worth a lot more. You guys have to realize how much more you are worth and the time that
But
you're spending in.
The focus here is millennials.
we have to
That's what we're
consider-
talking about, and why people who've been out in the oil field, because you work out in the oil field, people who work out in the oil field, all of a sudden they were doing safety for a company, XYZ company, and all of a sudden, they were at the bottom of the food chain. They're no longer working. And we looked at location, why they don't have a job, because they don't want to leave. We looked at experience, because they really only had 1 or 2 classes underneath their belts, or
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about money. So when it comes to our different generations, we have different expectations. Now, Ruth brought up the point that she is bilingual. How many of y'all took that into consideration when you
Yeah,
made
I'd
your
talk about that.
your analysis there? Yes, Alex.
I was thinking, well, I gave that price range due to region.
To region, and
Yeah.
that's a fair
Because
thing.
I was
If
going
we were
by-
in California, this would be a different conversation. But again, though, if I were to offer you $80,000 a year to live in San Francisco, 80,000 may not go as far as $50,000 a year in Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah.
So there is a cost of living index that you have to play into it. So to kind of sum this all up, when it comes to money, you need to take your experience, you need to take your education, the fact that you are bilingual, the fact that maybe there is a higher demand in Roswell, New Mexico for a Spanish speaking safety person as opposed to if I was in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Okay, there may not be a high demand for Spanish speaking safety people in Wisconsin. And in that particular case, I would have to lower my expectations. But a lot of times people, they have been given, I want to say that they actually have blinders on because they don't have real expectations. What does that mean, real expectations?
They don't
They don't,
think they're worth that, or they don't think they can do it, or
That
Well,
you
I mean,
sit
if
down and
I,
consider everything.
you can't.
and this is the problem that a lot of managers have with millennials. And again, I'm kind of grouping them all together. Obviously, they don't all act this way. But a lot of times managers have problems with millennials because they have gotten out of high school or they have just gotten out of college. I guess they would just be now getting out of college. And they expect to be managers, owners of companies, CEOs, and they expect that pay for their very first paycheck.
Mm.
So is that a real expectation?
No,
So, but I'm not going to graduate you guys. I'm stopping the program tomorrow. You guys are not going to graduate. And next Monday, you have to go out and get a job. Now, what is your expectation? Is it going to be less?
well, less than what you had before.
Less than what you had before due to the fact that you can't finish the course or that you did not get that degree or something along that lines. So with that in mind, you now know that the course no longer exists. What's your next move?
Enrolled in the college.
Move to a college that has the course.
There you
So
go.
we can finish our degree.
So you can finish your degree. Or shall we stare at that closed door and get upset about it?
We're just coming at you.
So let's go back to San Francisco and the girl from Yelp. She comes, maybe she has a degree, I believe she had a degree in communication. Does that warrant an $8.65 an hour job?
No,
Okay, so why did she take it?
because maybe that's all that was available.
Well, and this is it's going to be a little bit difficult for us because you're going to have to put yourself into what you believe millennials believe right
Climb the
now.
ladder.
Okay, would it be cool? We had a whole movie on this, The Internship, I believe it was. No, wait,
Oh,
not The Internship. The one where the two guys went to go work for Google. Why did they go work for Google? Google's kind of cool, right? You know, you get all of the cool stuff. Yelp is supposed to be a cool place. If you have a degree in communications, does that mean that you should take a $8.65 an hour, $8.67 an hour job?
no.
No,
So if that was the only job that you could find, what should you be doing?
$8.65 an hour.
Well, and people wrote back to her and they suggested, well, maybe you should get a roommate because she is living in an apartment by herself. Maybe you should get a roommate.
Just 'cause you have a job doesn't mean
When I was making, I think I was making $28,000 a year. I had two roommates. There's three of us. I had two roommates, and everybody contributed $200 a month, which means we had $600 a month, and that paid for our house because we actually rented a house, and that also paid for food. I mean, we had steak and lobster a lot because we had $600 a month that we could spend on the house, and the house, I believe, at that time was going for about $400. And so this was a few years ago, obviously. So you learn to adapt. That's what you need to do.
Mhm.
So money, location, experience, all of those things are going to come into play as to, you know, what you should expect. Your expectations should be real.
When I moved here, Mike, I almost had a heart attack I moved here from LA, and I used to live in Riverside County, and I used to make 23 some dollars an hour back then.
Okay.
I worked for the government, and I did all the food stamps, Medicaid, I did foster homes, all that stuff. And when I moved here, I went directly to work where I knew I could work. So I went and I applied for all the state jobs, and all the state jobs at that time were paying 11 and 10 and 13, and I was like, what? I said, with my experience, I don't want to make. I didn't move.
That's your pay now?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. And I looked for work everywhere, and there was a place who said, oh, you know what, we'll hire you on the spot, we'll give you the job. And I was like, okay. And they were going to pay me $5.40 or something like that an hour. I was in shock.
Of course, I'll hire you on the spot for $5.40.
Exactly. And it's just a big change in crazy stuff. But yeah, you have to. I didn't go to work for nobody. I decided that I wasn't going to work. That's when I opened the daycare. I had all the certifications to open the business because of everything I had back home, that it gave me the ability to open the business. I wasn't going to work for nobody for $10, $15 an hour. I said, forget it.
And, and you bring up a very good point, that entrepreneurial spirit. If you cannot find the job that you want, go out and make it.
Yep.
Now, I do a lot of consulting. I do a lot of consultings with large corporations. And you guys know, whenever I'm doing consulting, a lot of times I will make $1,500 a day. Should you, as graduates, make $1,500 a day?
No.
Would you expect that?
Probably not. Because if I was to get the same call from the same company as you're getting with the same questions, it would probably take me days and a lot of asking questions to other people, maybe sometimes even including you, to get the answer.
That's what he's going to do it for $1,200 a day.
Yeah.
I don't get the contract. He gets the contract, and then he calls me
Exactly.
and asks me all of the
So the
questions.
people, the corporations that come to you,
But that's called networking, though,
you
right?
pretty much know the answer on the spot. So that's probably why you're worth about $1,500 a day.
And there is a lot higher educated, more knowledgeable safety people out there than myself that are not making $1,500, that are not making $1,000, that are not making $500 a day. There will be people out there that if they could make $300 a day, they would be very happy. And I would love to tell you that I make $1,500 a day and I work for 365 days a year. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. But you need to have those expectations. If you cannot find work, go out and make work yourself. One way that you can make a lot of work is by doing stuff for free. Well, what do I mean by free?
Mhm.
You give away, you build a relationship, talking with folks, you're giving them answers, you're giving them your knowledge, and when it comes down to the big things, who are they going to call? Well, hopefully they're going to call you. You've built that relationship. That's the reason why when we talk about people when they're building their resumes. Your resume will get you the job interview. The interview gets you the actual job. We're talking about perspective, right? So the question is, you would like to make $100,000 a year, but I'm only offering you $10,000 a year. Will you take the job? And your answer, Alex, was, well, no, you don't want to take the job. I think that is a great job because you didn't have all of the different nuances to the job that I wanted. If I told you that I want you to come and work for me and that I'm going to pay you $10,000 a year, or we'll switch it around. I'm going to come work for you for $10,000 a year. I'm going to set up your safety program because I have a lot of experience setting up safety programs. And then I'm going to visit you 3 times a month. Now, what I want you to do as the company owner is that I want you to assign someone just to kind of process safety paperwork and stuff like that. You guys can call me whenever you want. But 3 times a month, I'm going to visit you or even, we'll make it 4 times a month. That's great. Once a week. I'm going to come and I'm going to visit you. I'm going to give your guys a safety briefing. We're going to talk about some current topic. You as a company owner, does that sound like a pretty good deal? $10,000, that's less than $1,000 a month. I'm running your program. I set your program up, and I come and give you a briefing once a week.
Now, we put it in that perspective, yeah, because that means you got time to go.
Right. Now, do you think that you could do the same thing for 10 other companies? So that means that in a 5-day work week, you got to hit 1 company, 2 companies every day. Do you
3 hours
think
apiece.
3 hours apiece? Do you think that you could do that?
No, now it's.
All right. So 10 times 10,000 is $100,000 a year. Used to have a sign company many years ago, and the one lesson that I learned 2 lessons while running the sign company. Well, actually 3. The third lesson is there's somebody's always who are willing to do it cheaper, but we're not talking about that. But anyway, the 2 lessons is that I had a guy tell me, he says, Mike, he says, you know what? He says, you sell more hamburgers than you do steak. What does that mean?
Go and do it. Make it more
Would you
accessible.
rather own Ruth Chris, which is a very expensive steakhouse, or would you rather own a local McDonald's?
McDonald's.
McDonald's makes a lot more money than Ruth Chris does because people can afford it more, so they buy more. The second thing that they taught me was no.
Learn to say no.
Learn to say no. There are some jobs that you don't want. You don't need every job. There are some jobs that you just don't want. When I send you guys out there, you now have your degree in hand. You're going out into the workforce. When you go to that interview, there's 2 things that you need to do. You need to really impress them, and you need to interview that company, because there are some companies that you don't want to work for. Comments?
I think the interview does it. Some people will look at your resume, but they more want to see that interview. It's about the interview.
I have actually told people when I go in to do a consultation with them, I have actually said, I believe someone's going to jail and it's probably going to be you. And they will ask me back. Why? Because I'm not painting the sky as blue. I'm not, trying to be a yes man. I'm doing what? I'm giving them an honest appraisal. People say, well, I don't want to do that. We don't do that at our company. We don't follow that safety stuff. You know how you handle that? It really is kind of cut and dry.
You show me.
The regulation says this. You're an adult. You own the company. If you don't want to do that, you just need to be aware of what the alternative, what else could happen to you. What happens if OSHA shows up? What happens if someone dies? You're the owner of the company. You're going to be held 100% responsible, and OSHA is one of the few agencies that will send you to jail for being stupid. So we're not there to beat people into submission with safety. We're there to present it in a logical manner where a logical person would follow safety rules and regulations. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. What do I need to do if I have some sort of safety training and I still just can't find a job? Well, we went through the 3 areas. You need to, take some consideration. Do you want to move? Can you move? What benefit would it be for you to move? Second from there is what are your current qualifications? I know that you may think that you have all of the qualifications that you need to actually become a safety professional or to continue on, but you need to just ask the hard question, do you really have it? If you have experience and no education, that's the easy part. Because the easy part is you can get more education. My average student is about 36 to 38 years old. Now, we do have some 18-year-olds, but then again, I also have students as old as 60 years old many times. So what you need to do is to look at, what can you afford, um, or what training is available. There are many great places to get training and education in the safety realm. That's one of the reasons why, as the director of the National Center for EHS Education, we offer not only a degree, but we offer 4 different certifications when it comes to safety. And certifications, that's the letters behind your name. We also offer our degree 100% online. So you need to take that into consideration. Someone who's out there, they've realized that they need the education, we can fulfill their goals. Not only do we do the in-class classes, but we also offer the online classes, and then we offer about 30 some odd 1, 2, 3, or 4 day classes. So that may be something that somebody wants to do, where they come here to Roswell. Actually, you don't even have to come to Roswell, because depending on the number of students that we're looking at, if it's just a 1 student or 2 students, yes, you're going to have to come here to Roswell. Or if you happen to have, we'll say, 7 or 8 students, we'll actually fly out there or drive out there, come to them, and we offer them the same training that we offer right here. So you have experience, but you don't have education, we can get you the education. We're one of the most effective, or least expensive colleges in the country. People who come to our college for a in-state tuition, $67 a credit hour. Now, where are you going to get accredited, because we are fully accredited safety training for $67 a credit hour? I know that when I went through my bachelor's, my master's, and different things, I paid $550 a credit hour. So we're economical. If you want to do it online, you do it online. If you want to do it in class, you do it in class. We offer the differences. So you get your education, you get your certifications, you get your degree. Now where are you going to go? Well, there are plenty of jobs out there. You just got to start hitting the pavement. The key thing that I want you guys to remember, though, is just don't give up. Because, again, we look at people want to work in their area. Well, sometimes you just can't work in that area. Oil and gas is going to be a good example. When oil and gas goes down, because oil and gas does go up, oil and gas does come back down. When oil and gas goes down, then all of the areas, the Texas, the New Mexico, the Arizona, areas such as North Dakota, which rely heavily on oil and gas, those jobs are going to disappear temporarily. Maybe you need to do something a little bit different than work safety. But, and this is one of the big things that I have a hard time with other colleges that teach safety, because there are plenty of them. In fact, Harvard now has a safety degree. Do you want to have a Harvard degree? That's totally up to you. I'm sure it's a good school. I don't know anything about their program. But, do you want to have that type of degree? Or do you want to pay for that type of degree? So when you start looking at what you want to do with your education, you go out there, you get your education, and you decide, is it just in oil and gas? Well, that's the reason why we just don't teach oil and gas here. We teach construction. We teach general industry. We do teach oil and gas. But then now we're also getting into agriculture. We have some new changes in the agriculture regulations. So you want to get a degree that's well-rounded, so that you can go into different types of career fields as you progress through your career. Then you hit the streets. You hit the monsters.com. I will tell you that most of the time you're not going to knock on a door and get a safety job. The way that you get the bigger safety jobs, because that's what everybody wants, the way that you get the bigger safety jobs is that you use a headhunter. Headhunters, you don't pay them, but they are paid by other companies to go out and find good qualified people to come and work for them. And they get paid accordingly to how much of your salary is going to be. So get yourself a headhunter. How do you do that? Well, you got to put your resume on monster.com. We're going to talk to Career One Stop, used to be America's Job Bank, now Career One Stop. LinkedIn is going to be an excellent place to be at. LinkedIn has quite a few recruiters that constantly go through the people who work for LinkedIn or who are on LinkedIn, and they recruit from there. This is where they get their big pool. And as I said earlier, when you go in to do the job interview, you want to interview the company as well as has the company interview you, because there are plenty of companies out there that you don't want to work for. So let's say that you got the education, but you don't have the experience. A little bit more difficult because education is the easier part to get, a little bit more time consuming. But so you have the education, but you don't have the experience. You're going to have to find some companies that are going to be willing to give you a chance. Well, here's what most companies, and I deal with a lot of companies on a regular basis. They say, well, we want a bachelor's degree in safety and we want a CSP. Well, the reason why they say we want a bachelor's degree in safety and we want a CSP is because that's what somebody has told them that they want, that this is what you need. Many companies, even including the government, will take an associate's in safety if it is in safety. Now, if you don't have a degree in safety, then they're going to want a bachelor's degree in science or some related field, and that makes a little bit more sense. So we want to talk to the companies. The only hiccup that you're really going to run into is if you run into a computer-generated resume reader. Computer-generated resume readers, which the government loves to use, they're going to look for certain keywords at certain points in the resume. If you don't hit those points, your resume will never be written or never be read. So you want to make sure that you hit those points. How do you find out if they're using a computer to read it? You call up the HR person again, you just ask them. How do you guys vet, or how do y'all go through reading the resumes? If they say, well, we have a computer program, then you are going to have to adjust your resume to meet the requirements of what the computer is looking for. You want to send a resume to a Conoco or to a Boeing or some major company that's going to be out there, make sure that you have a letter of introduction. If you just send in a resume, especially an unrequested resume, a lot of times they don't get read. So, letter of introduction. You want to make sure that it is good. It tells about you. This is going to be the narrative part of your resume. That's the letter of introduction. It's the narrative. That's the part where we tell the story as to why you should hire me, because I'm the best safety guy out there on the planet. Your resume should not be in narrative format. It should cover A, B, C, D. It could be sequential. It could be chronological. It all depends. There is a book out there I read many years ago, excellent book on writing resumes, called Damn Good Resume. Small book. I would strongly suggest that you pick that up if you want to learn how to correctly write your resume. Never lie on your resume, because you'll always get caught. And that's the last thing that you want to have happen, is that now you have finally got that $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job, and you find out that they read your resume and they checked up on you and they found out that you lied. So never lie on the resume. So to finish this up, we've talked a lot about the different ways that safety folks can go out there, find jobs. Some of the problems that you have, they're just going to take some work. Again, I want to leave you guys with this. Don't give up. You keep hitting the streets. I have students who have graduated from my course within a couple years. they're 80,000, 90,000. I even have one that graduated about 4 years ago, young guy, making well over 100. If you speak Spanish, make sure that people know that, because a Spanish-speaking safety person, you write your ticket, because there is a glut of people who they need the safety training, but they need it done in Spanish. If you don't live in this in New Mexico or in Texas or in an area where there's a large or predominant Hispanic population, you learn to find out, well, who's going to be the people in that area. Let's say if you were down towards North Florida, maybe Vietnamese. There's a lot of Vietnamese that are there. So maybe you should learn Vietnamese. It all depends really where you want to work. But in general, Spanish speaking, you're going to find tons of work also. So with that, we'll close. If you guys want to talk to me a little bit more about this a little bit later on, we'll go ahead and do that. But we'll go ahead and we'll get into the lessons. I'm glad you guys come up with questions. I mean, as always, you can always call me, email me or whatever. But anyway, feel free to always ask me questions, because, you know, my job is to make sure that your job gives you the rewards that you deserve, because you've earned them.